Now
Someone
people
is recording this meeting. So
record.
someone got it to record.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just started it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Cool. We'll get started. And I'll send out a text. We'll have these every week, Thursday at 8. I have somebody assigned with a topic from now till April. And so I've made a couple adjustments. Brad, Dan, and Benji have seen all that. So all you guys, there's probably a bunch of guys here on the call that you have assigned week, but I'm taking this week. I'm going to give a quick, there's 3 things that I'm going over tonight, and I want to kind of run through those with you guys and see if I can open my notes while I'm talking on here. So I'm going to go, first thing I'm just going to go over for guys that are first years, and I don't know who on this call is their first year compared to guys their second year to guys that are like third year and past. But I'm trying to wanting to hit something that I'm personally passionate about that I think will help first year guys, something guys that are going into their second year, and then guys that are in their third year. And it'll apply, each section I think will apply to every group of guys, whether if it's your first or your, what I was explaining to the third year guys will still apply. But so for the guys that are first doing their job, I just want to explain from my perspective the opportunity, and I maybe give some background on myself. Sean Williams, sold ADT now. First year was came to the company. My first summer was 2012. So we've sold ADT a long time. I don't know how many, for I think 7 years in a row, I did about 330 accounts. My first year I did roughly 200, and have had multiple teams that did, 2,000 accounts or so, or a region that's done more. So we've trained a lot of guys, have sold a lot of accounts personally. One of the things I think some of the guys, and I can talk about a second, is I've realized that every year I've done it, I've gotten a little bit better, even though as I've gotten older. I did my personal best week this year. I did 37 accounts funded in a week. I did sell a few more than that, but the techs weren't quite keeping up, and I had one of the techs show up to a house, and then they said, "Hey, come on over." But I'd sold there's all these houses next to each other, and so we had 2 techs install the systems in the wrong house with the wrong name. And we had to take them out, and both of those, we lost them. So if you sell a lot, you just got to make sure your techs keep up. But so I've did that, had my best week this year. The last blitz, I was on a blitz, like a week and a half ago, I did 25 in the week. So for guys, like you can see what's possible at the job, and I can train guys on how to sell a lot. That's kind of, and also I think all the guys that have done it for a long time continue to do the job. Because we all do something outside of the job, which is investing. We'll talk about that in some of these meetings. But I remember way back, Brad Alfin's probably on this call. I remember Brad going on a blitz, and I still remember him selling 12 and being like, I was gone for a week and made whatever $8,000 and back. I'm like, I can't believe you just can go make that and come back. And so same thing at 25 accounts, you can make 20 grand in a week. I just like, what's possible is like, there's guys on this call that can go out and in 15 weeks during the summer make 100 grand and take, what's 52 minus 15, 37 weeks off for the year and make 6 figures. It's pretty crazy what you can accomplish. But guys who really buy in, there's guys who, that do even better than that because they continue to commit themselves. So I want to talk a second about the thing that you're going to come out of the job other than money. So I'm going to tell a quick story. When I was a kid, when I was 15, I was working for a farmer. So I'm from Idaho. When I knock on people's doors, I tell them I'm a potato. They usually think it's funny. I don't know, but they'll have a bunch of guys, I think, that is sellers. There's a group of us from Idaho. No, guys are from all over the country now. But I worked on a farm. When I was 15, there was 7 of us that moved pipes. So in Idaho, you have to move irrigation pipe to irrigate the fields. The farmer I worked for was a small farmer. So if you have more money, you usually have pivots or wheel lines. So if you're a poor farmer, you usually have hand lines, which are a lot of labor to move. They're probably like 70 feet long, big metal pipe that you move, and then you move them across the field to irrigate the field. And it's, anyways, rough. But so the farmer came to us, and the seven of us. His name was Joel, big handlebar mustache, kind of awkward guy. But he said, "Hey, I'm not going to be. I'm thinking my farm. I'm going to have to sell it. I don't have any money. I'm not going to be able to pay you guys." So basically, told us that he was thrown in the towel. I went home, told my parents, and they said, "No, you're going to continue to work for him." So I did that whole summer. I worked for free, and I did what seven of us usually did. I did myself, which usually you're moving like, we're used to moving like 4 lines a day. It'd take you usually like an hour a line if it's like 35 pipe. The pipe weren't very good. The pumps were bad. But we were usually doing this, the seven of us. So I went from doing like 4 lines to doing 26 lines. It took me all day. But the thing that I got out of all this is there were so many times that I wanted to quit. And I remember at one point in July, I got West Nile. So as if anyone that's had this virus, it's from a mosquito. I was flu symptoms, so very weak and sick. And what usually took me like 12 to 14 hours a day was taking me like 16 or more hours. And so I was struggling getting it all done in a day. And at the end of one of the days, it was dark, and I usually had it done before it was dark. I passed out in the field and got up, and I had this bad headache. And I knew that if I just threw in the towel, that it wouldn't get done. And so there was only like 1 line left. It was the smallest one, and I ended up finishing it. And what I learned from this experience was that if it wasn't going to get done, that no one was going to do it, and that the crops would have died, and the guy would have lost everything he had. And so I learned the ability to never quit and to do something very hard. And from that point on life, everything has been easier. And so something I'm passionate about with this is most of the guys that start doing this job are early 20s. A lot of us, there's other jobs you can do this at the same time that you have, like there's, some guys will join the military. They'll do things hard in their life that you'll say set them up for the rest of their life. Either it's like their sports or do a construction job, but it's something that you do something very difficult. I think I'm passionate about too many of us being too soft. A lot of the hard jobs, like labor, like at farms, everything's automated now. Construction, there's less, everything. So I think it's important to do something that you push yourself. And this job gives you an opportunity to do that. And so I feel like a lot of the guys, when they finish their summer, they're like, I just did something very hard. I've made more money than I've ever made. Or even, and it's not physical, it's mental. Because the guys who do well, we have a lot of guys that make hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not the best sales guys, but they just don't quit. They learn how to be disciplined. And I think the first thing that you'll take from this job is each of us will be part of a team where we'll have thrive because the teams we're in, but you have to develop the discipline to go out and when nobody's watching, continue to work when things are hard. And so that's one thing that I'm passionate about, that we all need to, like, that'll stay with you forever. This as we do these trainings, as you go out and you finish the summer, you'll realize that everything has to do with some sort of sales. So all the guys that we've trained, they'll come back and like, the reason I'm good at what I'm doing is because I was involved in sales for a couple years, and it's helped me excel in life. And so, but hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I feel like that's the number one thing I think that passionate about first years. I asked Dan Moser in January to go over, he'll do over like an investing. A lot of the guys who do this job, the goal is to obviously make more than you need to live on, and you can use it to get a head start when you're young. that's the other thing that it'll be a byproduct of learning to do something that's hard. So, so to help guys in selling, though, I'm going to go on. That's just kind of my what I wanted to explain for first year guys. That you're going to come out. It'll be something that you can apply yourself in, that you'll get a big reward out of it. For guys who have done this, that are learning to sell, I want to talk about a training that I do. It's my first training that I do each year. A lot of the guys that I've sat in trainings with me have heard me talk about ethos, pathos, and logos. I want to take, it's how I evaluate getting better at selling. So the reason that I did 37 in a week this year, where I'd never done it before, is I do think it's fun to get better at what you're doing. I think it's good to see self-improvement within yourself. And how I do this within myself is I'll evaluate, it's ethos, pathos, logos is emotion, credibility, and logic. And it's how I look at my whole sales process. And it's also how I evaluate how well I'm doing in my pitch, and also the guys that I'm training. So I'll lead with logic. I tell guys that the way that I sell is I sell the program that we're doing before the product, and I get them to listen to me. Historically, though, I've noticed that most guys who sell consistently, they have a way of leading with credibility, which they lead credibility. There's a few guys that I've seen that lead with emotion within their sales process. That, but to sell people in general, you have to do all three. Emotion a lot of times will just come on as they listen, and people decide to sign up. But all of these skills can be developed. I want to ask, and I'm going to put a couple people on the spot in giving examples of this. I'll probably start with credibility. We'll have some guys talk about logic, and then some guys talk about emotion. So that's why I was trying to hope to see experienced guys that are on this. I'll call, I know, because I work with Benji regularly, I know he leads more with credibility. So I just wanted to shoot this to Benji. I want him to like shoot out 10 things or that he does that works to create credibility early when he goes to a door. And that's important part of his process, that if he does, Benji, if you do, you don't sell, or if you do, you do sell, but if you're missing it, you wouldn't sell. Like, what's the things you do? They're like, I need, like, this is what I do to build credibility. So it makes sense to people.
Sure. So there's a lot of things. I think it's super important to, it doesn't matter what product you're selling or the company you're selling for. If the person behind the door doesn't think you're credible, they're probably not going to transact with you. So the first thing I would say is just looking sharp. So we'll do a training at the start of the year on just, we want to look professional. So every year we'll have reps show up, and maybe we'll have a little shaggy hair or too much facial hair like Sean, or piercings. Like we had a years ago, our top rookie had dreadlocks, had sleeves, tattoos, like tons of tats up and down his arms, and had a lip ring and nose ring. And I remember we would talk to him and say, look, we don't care. We're not judging you, but 65-year-old Susan and John might judge you. So he ended up pulling his dreads back, wearing long sleeves to cover up his tattoos. He took his piercings out, and just made sure that at every door he showed up as a professional, because when they opened the door, within the first 10, 15 seconds, pretty quickly, they are going to determine whether they find you credible or not. So I would say that that's the first thing. Body language, just being confident, speaking clearly, not sounding super nervous, knowing the neighborhood that you're in, is going to help with credibility. A lot of these things are going to sound like small things, but they're small things that end up making a big difference. The street name, zip code, we'll always have someone each year that will lose a deal because they are halfway through their sales process and they ask the homeowner, "What do you know what city we're in?" When they go to like qualify the customer, and the homeowner's like, "You don't even know what city you're in." So not knowing the city, not knowing street names, those are some things that are going to cause you to lose some credibility. Trying to think what else. Name dropping people in the neighborhood. Specifics about people in the neighborhood. If you sell somebody and they gave you reasons they bought, whether things they do for work, and you can bring that stuff up with other people you're selling, is going to build credibility. Those are the main ones I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, any other experienced guys, I'm sure, could chime in and have other things, but knowing the neighborhood and what's going on in the neighborhood is a big one. You should at some point you should have people saying, you know more about my neighborhood than I do. Whether it's like, about the walking path that they're putting in that weaves in and out of the houses, and people concerned about the foot traffic back there, so they want a camera back there, or whether it's how old the houses are, when they were built, the different changes, people moving out, renters moving in. The goal should be at some point having people say, "Geez, you know more about the neighborhood than I do." So I think a combination of all those things help with credibility. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, Sean.
No, that's helpful. And I think the biggest thing is, because as I said, is anything that you're selling, I think the first obstacle is credibility, and ADT and Google obviously help that. And that's why we're passionate about that, because like ADT overall just has a lot of spillage. They can't even, like, in lots of places, install all the people who want to get the system. And so you go into areas that like we can fulfill and install, and there's people who want it because the name brand, and it just helps us because we have instant credibility. But you still, even though the company's credible, you just need to say, "Hey, like Benji mentioned Susan, or like your neighbor Susan sent me by," and like, "Yeah, I know Susan. They said you've been in the neighborhood a long time. That's why I came," because they're looking for people who've been in the neighborhood a long time to help us with our advertising. So guys are new. Most of us are doing some sort of pitch like, "Hey, you keep out the little ADT sign. We pay for a system or front the cost of a system to go into the home. You just pay to keep it active. We'll get calls off your home. It helps us with advertising," right? But the reason Susan, like I said, she has little dogs. When she's gone, she just likes the idea that it keeps her dogs safe in case of a fire. And she didn't have a peephole, so there's times that people come to the door. Since her husband passed away a couple of years, she just likes seeing who's there. And we're keeping her connected to the medics, and the whole system actually costs her less than your normal life alert, and has a life alert or medical alert with it. So I'm like priming them in their head, like through like Susan sent me by and like what she said she liked about it, and they know I'm legit, but also that what we're paying for is doing less than her medic system, has a medic system with it. And then I'll go into cameras and everything they'll get with the system, but in the back of their mind, they know they're going to pay for it, but it's going to be less than their normal. If you're calling in spending whatever $70 on a medical alert, it's going to be with what you save on your homeowner's insurance, that or less, And so so you do some priming, you end up learning how to soft close, but weaving through it all, you need to make sure that you get head nods, which is meaning you're speaking the truth or something that they agree with. And if you're doing that, it's going to build credibility. And there's guys on this call that have sold for companies that weren't ADT, and they've either had to work really hard on selling the company they work for, or they got someone to the deciding factor and said, "Hey, we don't know your company. We need to shop around. We like the deal. We like you, but we need to like do some research on your company," and ended up ruining the deal for them. The benefit with ADT is you're going to get less of both of those. And so I know a lot of guys that have sold alarms, but when they've done ADT, they've doubled their numbers. And I know me personally, I'm selling a few accounts a week just because the old person was like, I've seen these in the neighborhood. You are a legit company. I think if we were to do something, it'd be with you guys anyway. But I would still have to build that I'm credible. And you do that, especially with older people. If somebody sent you by, or you know how long they've been in the neighborhood, or you speak the truth about their city and the changes, and they agree with you, you're going to be able to, and especially if they agree that their neighborhood's changed. If I can have an older person agree with me that their neighborhood's changed, I typically will sign them up. But that's the first thing that you have to be able to do. And if you're selling and you've in a rut, you can evaluate yourself and be like, am I building enough credibility, or am I just going door to door? And does it feel like when I go to somebody's door that I'm going door to door, or does it feel like when I go to somebody's house that I'm going specifically to them? Like before I get there, do I know how long they've been? Do I know the neighborhood? Do I know their neighbors? And when I'm talking to them, am I getting a lot of head nods? And if you're getting this, that means that you're credible to them, right? And you're going to have everybody come out that people fold their arms and shake their head and try to get rid of you. And you'll learn your ways to break preoccupation to get, I think 2 things that I'm good at is getting everybody to listen to me as one. And number 2 is every person, I'm going to get a yes or no from everybody, which the main part of my training that I want to go over is how to get a yes or no from everybody, because the people who sell the most are getting yes or no's. The people who sell the least are getting a high percentage of maybes, think it overs, check back with me. So, and I have plenty of people that I like that need to think about it for a second. And I have ways to give them that I stay around to give them time to digest it. My main goal in signing somebody up is not to get a yes, which is like weird probably to everyone. I'll have people sign up with never telling me yes. I do not want to get a yes. Actually, I just want to avoid a no. And you become good at dancing on the eggshells and avoiding a no. And I want to go over that. I need to talk about logic and emotion first, but we're going to end with talking about yes or no's from everybody. So 3 parts of my training is, hey, what this can do for you as a person. 2, how to evaluate and become better at it. And 3, how to increase the percentage of people that you sell, that you talk to. So we talked about credibility. Is there anything experienced reps want to add that we've missed, or that they feel like is important, or questions from guys learning to do it that this is where they're trying to get better at? No worries. Brad, you chimed in, or maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would add everything that Benji said. I agree with 100%. I would maybe add, look like you have a purpose on the street. I know a lot of first years will wander. But if people are looking out their doors and they're like, man, that guy is on a mission. You're waving at the neighbors on the porch. You're going from house to house with a purpose. I think people can notice that and see that. A lot of times we'll drop off, and if you see another company and they're just kind of moseying around without energy, people notice that. So just while you're there, knowing the street, knowing the names, knowing who has ADT, helps a ton.
Yeah, some people have heard my pitch. For the guys who don't, my pitch at the very beginning is like, hey, we're in the neighborhood. We'll be updating or installing about a half dozen of your neighbors here the remainder of the day, a couple early tomorrow. In between those updates, and then I explain the advertising. And so it's like, we're already
Sean,
there.
we have a question from Caleb. I don't know if you can see the chat or whatever, but Caleb asked he said, what are things you like to do to find out the change in the neighborhood before you hit it?
Sorry, say that again.
The question is, what are things that you like to do to find out the change in the neighborhood before you hit it, like before you get there?
Well, you can know when you get into a neighborhood real quickly. You'll find out I'll go neighborhood. I'm like, I've been here before 100 times. The first, like, but the very first person that I talk to, I am logic heavy in my sale, which is meaning I don't know as much about the neighborhood. So if you don't know anything about the neighborhood, you're going to probably start with logic. Once you've been in the neighborhood for an hour, you're going to every person that you get to know from or that you talk to say, hey, you don't mind if you help me real quick? Like I said, we're doing all these updates and we've had a lot of calls in the neighborhood. You know it better than me. Do you know any reason why? And they'll tell you like, oh, that house is a drug house. That's probably why. They put in that new Walmart. We get a lot of foot traffic. And I've lived here for 5 years and there's probably twice as many renters as there used to be. The next house I'm going to, like, hey, we've had the neighborhood's changed a lot. A lot of it's because it's a lot of the original has moved out. There's younger families and there's more rentals, and we've had more calls. Some of it's, I mean, some of it's crime. There's been car break-ins or whatever. Like every neighborhood where there's more rentals, there are going to be car break-ins. But you can find out about the neighborhood really quick. And going into a neighborhood, you can look at Google Maps and see what growth has been going on around, what businesses have gone up. You want to research when you're going to the town, know something about their town. But you're going like Susan, as soon as you talk to Susan, or you'll have something to talk about. The thing I train, I think we all train, is when you first get dropped off, go knock on a couple ADT customers. And you'll get information and talk to them. And you have to go about that right. When you have to ask the right questions that don't sketch them out, which your manager can go over with you more. But mine is just simple. I'll look at the iPad like I'm looking at their account. Was the system here when you moved in? Were you the first one that had put in? Oh yeah, we were the first ones that had to put in. You know it's active. Like and then at that point you're just saying, hey, we're literally just asking for referrals, and you like learn from the neighborhood and get to know them. So it doesn't take long to become a professional in the neighborhood. And you'll learn the things that work for you. Like for me with old people, like whenever I talk to somebody, I usually don't go to somebody's house because I'll talk to one person and they'll tell me everybody they know in the neighborhood. And I usually don't go to somebody's house unless most houses I go to, I know if they've been in the neighborhood very long, or if they've a new move in, or asked, like I pointed at their house from their neighbors and asked them about them specifically and found out everything that the neighbors know about them. And, you know, you're the guys with the wiener dogs, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, that is us. You've been in the neighborhood like 5 years. Oh yeah. I'm like, okay, perfect. You're who I was trying to catch. And then all of a sudden I'm credible. And it's just something their neighbor said. Does that answer that? Hope so. It makes all the difference though. It's the craziest thing. You have to, like, if you're doing the job right, you'll sell a lot. And to do it right, you have to build credibility. To build credibility, when you go to a house, it has to make it seem like you're going specifically to them. It just makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, Sean, if I could just add a minute to that. I've been in areas, I've been shut down extremely hard by people on Monday or Tuesday or whenever I started in the neighborhood. But by day 3 or 4, they've seen me come in and out of their neighbors' homes. They've seen my technicians installing cameras on several of their neighbors' homes. They've seen me picking up the trash can that flew into the street. They've seen me like almost be a part of the community. And literally I've had people I'm, walking by, I'm like, hey, I remember the name or whatever, just shout at them. And then they'll stop me day 4 and they're like, now how much was it? And, and I just kind of grin inside. And so I've never really been confrontational on the doors ever. And it's been a big blessing because it'll come back tenfold. And that's happened. I mean, I can't even count how many times that's happened. I even had a guy that told me to get the F off his driveway, and literally sell him that same day when he walked into his best friend's house, who I was already setting up 2 blocks away. And he walked in and like looked at me like, oh crap, there's the guy I told to get that F off my property. And ended up setting him up, found out he found out his wife was cheating on him, He was going to lose one of his restaurants he was starting. Like, just had a really bad day. And, I could have told something back to him. I could have back talked, whatever. And I just apologized and went on my way and just shrugged it off and went to the next door, and then ended up selling his best friend, who he ended up walking into while we were setting him up. And he was just like so apologetic and so sorry. And then I ended up setting him up 5 hours later. So just it truly is a don't judge a book by its cover. You just don't know what people are going through. Their grandma could be dying. They could be freaking dying. They could have just found they got cancer. You really just don't know. And so I think maintaining professionalism has made me tens of thousands of dollars just being a little bit more professional than the last sales guy that was in their neighborhood. So that's what I would say.
And they could just be straight up mean sometimes, but some of my favorite sales are the meanest people. They're the most.
Yeah. Mean
But-
old ladies.
One thing that has changed for me and Dan from when we've started that makes a big difference that I've seen, because the most satisfying is going back and knocking on somebody that told you no a couple days ago, and then stopping by and knowing you caught them at a bad time and signing them up and understanding that. One of the things that's going to help that happen, though, with people stopping people like with Dan, that's changed, is Facebook, social media. When you sign people up, it will help you a lot with momentum by asking, hey, do you mind if you do a favor? I'll be in the neighborhood for a couple days, or if you can make a quick post, like I'm in the neighborhood, I'm in legit, help them make the post. You don't want them to pitch price or anything like that. Just it's a legit. We had it put in. We love the Google cameras. They're doing something why they're here in the neighborhood. And it does help you get a yes or no from more people, because people will see that on the neighborhood Facebook page. And there's going to be people that you come to the door and they said, oh, we're not interested. We don't, and you still end up signing them up because they don't understand the deal. But you do that enough times, and over 4 days, all of a sudden there's 8 posts on the neighborhood Facebook page. It's significant. And it used to not be a thing, but it also will help your whole team. So the whole team as a group, once you get into a city, as you guys do that more, like it's going to just create momentum with a city. I mean, I'm good with old people. I'm good with authority figures too. I've signed up plenty of mayors and plenty of chief of police, chief of fire department, these important people. And when they like you and when they post and the whole city sees it, it makes a difference for everybody. And so you're going to have that experience like Dan, where you walk by somebody and be like, I'm actually a fireman, and the chief has it. And I want to, like, let me talk to you about this. But you'll create momentum in a town. You'll create momentum in a city. But you can also create negative momentum. You can have somebody get a bad post on a Facebook page. You just got to keep things in your favor. And that will help with the credibility. That will help with your percentage of people who are signing up. And that's when it gets really fun. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add before I go into logic and emotion? And any experience, guys, like I just did that with Benji, did really good talking about credibility, that like, I know like, for example, Brad, whether you know it or not, you're very good with using emotion within your sales process, better than me, right? That's Brad Alphin, who I'm talking to. There's guys, everybody uses one of those 3, and everybody uses one more than the other. All right. So logic, I'll explain it because it's my bread and butter. If I just got to a neighborhood and I haven't put together my credibility yet. So when you're giving such a good deal to people, they're going to be wondering why they get such a good deal, and you've got to make it logical sense. The other thing that the logic does for you is once you start explaining logic, people won't feel like they're being sold, and they'll listen. And what the hardest thing that got to accomplish is just getting people to listen to you. If you can get people to listen to you, they'll buy. The way you get people to listen is you make sound logic, right? And so the way that I do it, and everyone will create logic differently, is I tell a story. So I'm like good at telling stories, and I'll just explain, like you guys heard the beginning of my pitch, like we're in the neighborhood already. There was whatever 6 texts, and we're doing blah 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 blah. And then I basically go into story mode, and they just start listening to me because they don't even feel like I'm selling them anything. I'm just like, it's just like I just start telling them a story, and the story makes sense. And it ends with with me saying, hey, whatever, we just changed the number on our sign. It was a 1-800 number, but with everyone fast forwarding our commercials, like the Property Brothers were $8 million for the ads this year. We're doing more internet ads instead of TV, and within neighborhoods seed marketing where we do advertising homes. And then we changed the number because that's the number you can get ADT now. And then we put the web address. You'd be blown at how many people call us on or order us online compared to call us over the phone. So we're having to change with how the world's changing with our marketing, and the best is word of mouth. And I tell this big expectation. I explain how the industry is changing, how we're changing, and I explain this whole story that captivates. And at that point, I'll explain what the system does that helps us. So that's something I've I guess got good at. The other thing is that people try not to listen to me. I don't know how, but that logic, like I'll have people come out and get in my face and be mad. And I train guys to stay a 7. And as long as you start explaining something that's not like trying to sell them something, they'll listen. And as soon as they're sold on the logic and on the program, they'll be on the same side of you. They'll see you as a person. You'll see them as a person. Then you can move forward. As you stay in the neighborhood longer, the goal is to use more and more credibility, because you'll sell the most using credibility, but you need to have sound logic. Any questions on that? Anything that experienced guys want to chime on? Did that make sense? I didn't want to go into exactly how I do it because every manager trains their guys different, and every single one of us train on some sort of logic. But I want you to use everybody has a manager that's selling well and training well. You don't need to say what I say, but you need to have sound logic. Trying to think of guys I know on this call that use logic really well that I've seen pitch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say Sean does a great job of making a reason that you're on their door. Because we're knocking their door, so why are you there? What are you doing? That's where the logic comes in. Whether that be my manager put me on the street today and we're doing 2 systems today. We like your house because you're a corner house and everybody stops at the stop sign right at your house and sees your house. Whatever the logic is, it just needs to make sense for the customer of why you're there.
And it needs to make sense to you. Identity is important. You'll gain a lot of confidence. And the thing that I love about pitching logic is rejection. Like, people can tell me no to my story, and I'm like, I'm not getting I believe what I'm saying, and it doesn't matter with the rejection because I'm just telling them a program and a story that we're doing. And there's no form of rejection that they can do that, like, they're not saying, no, I don't want an alarm, because I'm not at that point explaining to them what the system does. I'm just explaining the logic. But the identity is important, and what you're doing and your identity as a rep. And as long as that's unshakable, I can go to people all day and tell them my logic behind what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter. Like, rejection. The identity is important. And one of the things me and Benji always say, it doesn't matter that they believe, it just matters that they believe that you believe in your program and in what you're doing. So you've got to believe it. And then it does help though, if they're same with the credit, like they're shaking their head like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, because they're going to say, yeah, we do fast forward TV commercials, or like we do usually get something through word of mouth, or that does make sense when someone sees the Google cameras. And if they want one, if we have a neighbor who'll call, or I do, they'll agree. So the way for you experienced guys is I want you guys to take your pitch, and if you don't know what you're doing right now to build credibility, if you don't know what you're doing to build logic, it's good to define it, because the best thing you can do is pitch in the mirror. And if your pitch isn't making very good sense to you, it's not making sense to the people you're talking to. And if it doesn't sound like you're building credibility, I've changed my pitch, and it's weird to do the first time, your second time and beyond. It's not just to look in the mirror and then just to do your pitch. And the best adjustments I've ever made has been with Sean in the mirror. And what I said, I meant. I have gotten a little bit better, even though I'm not the top rep in the company anymore. I don't do as many cams as I used to, and I don't necessarily, like what I said, have to push myself to do like hell weeks all the time like I had done in the past. I still am better at selling today than I've ever been. And that's because I make a constant effort to evaluate and improve. And everybody can. My favorite people on this call and in the company are the ones who are the worst to start, that are making more money than they could ever imagine now, because their first year they made 15 grand and now they're making, they say that myself in the past, if I were to look at this, I'd be blown away at what I'm accomplishing. Right. So the way that you get there is from that evaluation. And if you guys, use the trainings, bother the guys that are training you, and you'll get better. But this is the way I evaluate it: logic and credibility. So the crazy thing for me that I generally catch myself in, I all of a sudden will stop selling, and it's because I leave out emotion. So emotion for me is the thing I use the least, and it's my weakest point, right? Brad's good at this, and Brad's talked a couple times, because Brad says things like, a big guy like you or a fat girl like this could like just kick out the little white pine in this door. Like a door lock is just false sense of security, because it will just pop right out. Right. And so, and there, or like Brad will say things like, this little target window, we just have, like, if someone just threw a brick through that, like he's saying it in a way that's like not offensive, but in the people's mind, they're like, oh wow, yeah, a target window, a dumb door, and white pine. It's like they're seeing, or even like, I don't know, those are all really old things you said a long time ago, but there's a lot of things like that. I do two things to build credibility on every sale. I'll say we've historically in the past haven't had as many calls in your neighborhood, but we've started to have more. A lot of it's younger families moving in. If it's more rentals or mover, like new area, I'll specify to them. And we've had a little bit of crime, mostly car breaking. So I'll say a little bit of crime, even if it's in the neighborhood I've had most crime ever. And then I'll let them say a little bit of crime. Or we've had some calls. It's mostly drug related. Like they're just stealing things like this on a pawn shop. Like it's very little. But if I do something very small like that, I just have to do something very small on every house. And I don't necessarily pitch crime. I pitch convenience on what the system will do as a convenience to them being connected to their home and family, as what I lead with, and life safety. But if I leave out any form of helping them build emotion, all of a sudden I'm getting a lot of people wanting to think it over. It's the weirdest thing for me. And it's just like one or two lines. I don't know if anybody, but you can ask things about their door, like their sliding glass door. Does it have a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch gap? And you go over and lift it up. You're like, oh, this is like a 1/2 inch gap. So the problem is they just lift that off the track. So we have a sensor that specifically for that or whatever. And they're like, oh wow, like that could happen or whatever. It's just like at some point, I guess I do this on every house. I'm tall, so I walk in and I take everybody's smoke detector down and I look at the date. And every smoke detector only lasts 10 years, but you'll have a smoke detector that was installed in 2005. This is like pretty normal, and it expired. It'll say on there, replace in 10 years, and the date will say 2005. And so I'm like, well, smoke detectors it's kind of like a battery or a car. You can keep changing the battery in a car, but if the engine's no good, it won't work when you need it. Or like I'll actually say it's like kind of like a can of soup. If it's expired a little bit, I'll still eat the can of soup. But if it's expired 9 years, you don't want to eat the can of soup. So I'll put it back up and say, since that needs to be done anyway, we'll just put in a new one. It'll monitor the fire department. You just pay a one-time fee to get it activated, but we'll pay for the $150 smoke and heat detector, and it does give you a little bit of a discount on your homeowner's insurance. And I just move on, and they're like, holy crap, I didn't know that my smoke detectors have been expired for 9 years. And I'm like, yeah, since that needs to be done, we'll just do it while we're doing it. And I always charge the activation for it. They don't know, but anyway, that's a little emotional thing. I do little things like that, but very little. Is there anything that anybody else does that they think helps them? Brad, you're good at this. What's something that you like
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, I was gonna say just every piece of equipment I use as a motion. For an outdoor camera, I say, hey, we're gonna put the camera over here on your car in case anybody ever breaks into your car. In their brain, they're picturing their car getting broken into. On the smoke detector, I say, hey, you have a gorgeous house here, you have some beautiful animals. Your smoke detectors, they just make noise. So if the house is burning down, unfortunately, your dog can't call 911. This one will call 911 for you. So in their brain, they're picturing their dog burn, which is sad, but it's creating emotion for that person. On a door sensor, it'll go beep, beep front door, beep, beep back door in case your kid's running out to the street. So when I'm explaining every piece of equipment, I'm using convenience, emotion, logic all together to drive that, the back door sensor, the slider, the target door, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm painting a picture of why they need that piece of equipment. And that emotion could be just convenience too, an indoor camera to where you can see when the kids got home. A doorbell camera has facial recognition to where if if it's a mailman or someone else, you're just painting that picture in the customer's brain.
And it doesn't have to be crazy, like intense, just to be like, hey, if you're gone a lot and your kids are here, you can, because it's always recording 24/7, there's going to be spots where you go back and see everything that's happened, and you'll be more involved in what your family's life, and you'll always be connected to your home and family instead of having this disconnect when you're away, not knowing what's going on. And I like to save I have an email folder that says funny recordings, and all the different ADT platforms we've used over the years. I'll save videos and my funny recording. The first one was my wife tripping over our dog. She didn't think it's funny, but I thought it was funny. And we have funny things my father-in-law said, my kids said, but it's just a way to keep connected. And you'll use that daily. And those type of things are helpful. It also tees you up for soft closing, and we'll have trainings on soft closing. But as you're talking about each device, or even you'll ask questions on, well, even when you're getting the email, you'll say, hey, to set up the camera system, because you've already explained it, that where it works through your phone to where you can check on the doorbell camera, your family on your way, we create that account through an email. What's a good email for you? And when they give you the email, they're saying, yes, I want the cameras. So when I put in every piece of equipment, or not equipment, when I put in each thing in the iPad, like email, emergency password, or the code, the emergency contacts, the questions that I ask re-solidify the little bit of emotion that I built in each device. I'll ask one question if I'm doing a smoke detector about the smoke detector, one about the camera, what about the alarm, where I'm allowing them to say yes to the emotion that I built earlier by saying, hey, if the house is on fire, when the fire department comes out, who could hold your dog when the fire department was here? And they'll be like, oh my gosh, who in the heck could take care of my dog? And that's re-solidifying the fires. With the alarm, I use the two-way voice, and I explain that. But each question they ask with soft closing is solidifying the emotion that I built behind each device, because I do that same thing Brad does. I probably use more emotion than I realize, but it comes later for me in the sale, where credibility and logic is heavier at the beginning. And so the way you can know if you're not selling, it's because you're missing a part of the I guess the overall ingredients that you need. And those three are logic, emotion, and credibility. You can evaluate your process, and you've got to make sure you have it in there. And if you get good at making sure you're balanced and have it, you're going to sell more, right? You've obviously got to start with getting people to listen to you. But once you do, and you learn those, they'll trust you as the professional and sign up, right? That's
You got
everything.
another question. You got another question here, Sean.
Yeah.
Meyer says, when you say we're installing half a dozen in the neighborhood, do you ever run into someone asking who you're helping? And if so, how do you maintain credibility if you haven't sold one in that subdivision?
Yeah, easy. So I mean, for me, like half a dozen, it's like pretty like a general number. But even if it's the very first home that I'm at in a house, the nice thing about ADT is there's ADT in every neighborhood, right? So a lot of it makes seem, because I started kind of pitching that when there's no money in it, but we'd update current ADT customers. So I was just like, yeah, we'll be working with some people, but I usually do sell about 3 a day, and they usually do see 6 of their neighbors pop up with it within I'll say the rest of the day and some tomorrow. And I never go into a neighborhood unless I'm going to be there for 2 days or longer. And so they'll see them go up. Like, and if they want to, if they want, Ian, I actually have, like, that's one of those questions that we worry about, but like, those are my favorite person. If somebody actually did ask me that, I'll be like, just hang out. I'll come back. If they're really thinking I'm not going to do 6, I'll be like, I'll come and go over them with you. But if it's like, I make it seem like people that already have ADT and people that will be getting it new, like a mixture. And no one's like, there's ADT in every neighborhood. And the techs are around, and they will be doing about a half a dozen homes, if not in their neighborhood, close, because there's probably a dozen reps within a mile of me or 2, you know. And when I have them paste, if the guys are posting on the Facebook page, if we've been there on a couple of days, I have guys say like, oh, I already saw you guys on the Facebook page. Like, oh yeah, cool. That's us doing it, you know? So, yeah, you'll have those people that like, but one of the things with the logic, I usually get people shaking their head up and down with me, where my first goal is to get a head nod with really quick, or say, this person sent me by, you probably know them, this, and this, and this. We'll be in your neighborhood. There's probably about a half dozen of your neighbors will be updating and putting a system in the remainder today and tomorrow. They've already given me a head nod and agreed with something that I've explained right out when I broke preoccupation, that they're not gonna like, they're not gonna confront me, because but if they did, we're gonna do a half dozen homes in the next couple of days. And if it's not in their subdivision, it'll be, I'll say, within your subdivision or close by. Because we're doing, I mean, some of the guys are saying, oh, we did 22 yesterday, new homes. We'll be probably doing about the same today, but you know, whatever. You just tell them what you're actually doing. If you're doing 2 on the street, you're doing 2 on the street. Just tell them what you're doing. And then the thing is don't use words trying, because it gets rid of credibility and logic right away. So don't say we're trying to do a half a dozen homes. Just say, hey, we're doing this. We're doing 2 homes. Just have confidence. Okay. One last thing, because I wanted to keep this to an hour or less. This is for guys that have done the job. So that was really for probably second year guys. Guys that have done it longer understand logic, emotion, and credibility. You guys just need to keep evaluating and remember to get better. There's this problem with and I didn't realize I was good at it until guys watched me and they're like, Sean, you literally get a yes or no from everybody. Like no one's getting a card from you. Like, and people that want to think about it later, and they're like, we'll get back to you. I somehow have a process, and I want you guys all to figure out your process to allow them to get back to you to say no, not to get a yes. So I set up some sort of appointment or even install, and saying, oh yeah, we'll have you like, I'll have them scheduled, even though they're not committed to doing it. I'll have them on, even though it's not on the schedule, it's my fake schedule for Wednesday at 10. And if it doesn't work out before then, just let me know and I'll take you off the schedule. But if somebody wants to think it over, I'm not waiting for them to get back to me to say yes. I'm waiting back for them to get back to me to say no. If they need time to think it over, then I'm getting a no from them unless I will get an appointment with a specific time, like at the end of the day, with their phone number and their address. Like I'm creating an appointment, and if they won't create an appointment, then I'm making sure, like, so I'll have like 3 appointments for this evening at 8 and 2 for tomorrow at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock when we start. And at 7:45 or 8 o'clock, I text all 3 of them, like I'm on my way. And I'll either get like, hey, we're out of town, stop by tomorrow at 4. Me and my wife had talked about it. We want to talk more. Or I'll get like, no, we don't want to do it. Or someone will be like, we're home. And if I show up and knock on the door, I'm not pitching them at the door. Again, I'm just going in. The funny ones is I'll only have 1 or 2, and I'll text them and I'll start going to their house and I'll show up and knock the door and I'll sign them up. And I will every now and then have someone say, oh, we decided not to. And I showed up anyway and signed them up. I didn't do it on purpose, but those ones I kind of laugh at afterwards when I see the text. But I typically do that because I'm getting a yes or no from everyone, and that's why I'm selling them out like most if I'm doing that. So I'll get some people to say no, don't come back by, but I'll get others like, we're here, and then I go sign those up. I typically don't set appointments for the next day. If there's certain types of people I will, and ones that I won't. But the thing is don't allow people to get back to you to say this is something they want to do. You have to have ways for them to get back to you saying this is something they don't want to do. And if it works out, we've got you on the schedule for Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I'll call you at like 9. So I call them up and I just continue to assume the sell. I'll review like what the packages and what the system was going in. And I say, I just need to merge the office in to do a little phone call with you. I just do a 3-way call. And then I call the contract, what they need for their insurance, and then I'll email them the agreement and go over it with them. Right. And I have this happen people and the first thing that I do is typically when you're talking to somebody, their spouse isn't there. So I have a lot of ways to get their spouse on the phone, even if they say they won't call them. You just have to ask a couple times and then you'll get a yes or no with them on the phone. There's lots of times you're in a house and you can see it. They just need a minute to digest. You say, you probably noticed my phone's been blowing up. I'm just going to step out for a second and take a phone call. That way you guys can talk about it for a bit, and then I'm going to come back in. And sometimes giving people that space where they're trying to get rid of you will help you sign up. But you need it in every scenario. If you're getting a maybe, you have to readjust to getting a yes or a no. And it doesn't have to be right then. It can be getting a yes or no after you go out and take a phone call. But as long as you get a yes or no, you're doing your job. There is times that you're getting no's that you can get a yes, but you do that through evaluation practice, and I call it EdPEP, but you evaluate, practice, demonstrate, evaluate, practice. And so that's why we work within our office is you evaluate, practice, or demonstrate, EdPEP. Evaluate, demonstrate, practice, evaluate, practice. That's my process. So if you're doing that, you need to, at the end of the day, figure out where people are telling you, give me a card, I'll get back to you, or you're getting your maybes, and make adjustments to where we're getting to the point of yes or no. If people in the house are just kind of saying no, like I don't really know, this is something we can do now, or just hang out, don't leave. Your momentum within the sale, you'll lose it and gain it. like I said, you're not trying to get a yes, you're trying to avoid a no. You can get 10 no's and 1 yes, and you got it. People are going to tell you no, and you'll be sitting at their table. It's usually not that hard of a no. It's like something that they need to like figure out. You're losing momentum. Lots of times you stay there long enough, you turn it back around. So that's, I think for guys that have done it for 3 years, you've got to realize where people are telling you the maybe or get a card, and you've got to make an adjustment to a yes or no. Said that a couple times. Any questions on that? That's more of a like a further along the sales process critique. What was the question? Someone say. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. That's my training for this evening. Managers on the call. I've got the whole list of all the trainings. I'll send that out. I might as well just send it out tomorrow. And we can go over what I assigned you, and I can make adjustments if we need. We'll hit these hard every week in January and really start going through the sales process beginning to end and helping people become like where when you guys go to a house, you guys have had 3 or 4 different ways from reps on how to collect billing, how to go over the contract, how like all those things you guys are improving on. I think it's going to be super valuable with all the knowledge on this call. A lot of you guys are better at a lot of part of the sales than I am, so it's going to be good to have all that shared knowledge. Appreciate you guys. We're at our hour, so hopefully that last part made sense. Kind of want to get one person to comment before I hang up or we hang up, so I don't feel like that didn't make sense.
I was going to ask something.
Yeah.
What kind of questions do you ask to know whether it's worth trying to set up like a one-legger right there instead of just scheduling to go back when the other spouse is there?
I have a rule with that. It depends on if I've dropped price or not. So I typically with a one-legger, there's a lot of one-leggers I sign up with just one of them there. But there's a lot of them. And I need to rephrase your question. So what questions do I ask to decide? Ask that question again. What questions do I ask?
To decide whether it's worth setting it up right there or going back, because sometimes you try to set it up and
Okay.
then you're worried that the decision maker, whoever, is going to come back and then just squash it.
Yeah, great. First question that I ask before any of that, how many smartphone users is there in the home? Because you usually don't know if they're married or if there's a significant other or that. So they're going to say there's 4 smartphones. And I'm like, you kids and my husband, right? I sometimes don't ask, I only ask that to younger couples. One leg, like if it's an old guy, I do it the exact same. The wife, like older people, anyway. So that's the first question. The second question I ask to gauge this. So I'll keep going. And what I'm really hoping to happen, Nathan, is I'll see them start to text their spouse, or I avoid dropping price longer when it's one person. But I tell them the point that I'm wanting to get to is where I build the overview so they can see it. And if they brought up their spouse so they can see it. So I'm telling them that I want to get to a certain point so they allow me to go further, to buy me time. Like I need to get to this point so you can see it and your spouse can see it. Between then and building that overview, I usually get them to call their spouse. I typically don't like the normal question that people ask because it's usually like something you ask on the way out when it's not working. Like, if this is something your husband is okay with, is it something you're okay with? Like, I know that a lot of guys ask that question, But I almost feel like I ask it when they're like, that's like, I'm like trying to leave myself. I'm like, that's like too easy of a no. So I'm first just finding out if there is a spouse. Obviously, and you already know this, but if they ask you a question about the system in any way, it's a sell, whether one spouse or the other spouse is not there. That's something everybody on this call, if you're new, you probably just heard that for the first time. Everybody else already knows that. If they ask you a question, that's a sell. So you'll have somebody ask you if it's a one leg or a question. That's better than whatever question you can ask them to gauge interest. But most of my questions are pretty simple, are like that will help me gauge interest from them. Are you an Android or iPhone user? Oh, I'm an iPhone user. Like your typical soft closing questions. Do you have a shop out back? Yes. Like if they tell me these simple little answers, it's enough for me to know that they're interested. And if they have any sort of interest on my really simple soft close questions, I know that if I get the other spouse on the phone, that I can get them on my page. And because really my goal is once I have the other spouse on the phone, say, hey, this is something that your wife has some sort of interest in. I just want to make sure you're not going to kill her if it's something they do. And like, oh, I wouldn't, and that's something that Brad said for forever. I've kept the whole not going to kill you. It's a little bit of a funny laugh, emotional thing, but they're like, I wouldn't kill them if they did something. If they had something they like, I'd be fine with it. And you'll have these people you get on the phone that, and I'll drop price with them real quick when they're on the phone because I'm not trying to waste their time. And they'll be like, honey, if it's something you're okay with, I'm okay with. And some of my quickest closes is getting that spouse on the phone, other than signing somebody up and having them call their family and signing up their family while I'm still in the house, never seeing their home. But questions that I ask are usually keep them simple. You can do the whole, like, if this is something your husband's okay with, are you okay with it? But I typically think that's just too much of a hard close. So just ask the most simple little things. And if they're answering, it's a little yes, it's a soft close. And if they're answering those questions, keep going. They'll end up, every objection, that if they tell you a couple times that this is something they need their spouse for, you got to get them on the phone or make them the last stop of the day. That's totally fine. You'll sign up a lot of people when their spouses get home. You'll sign up a lot over the phone, and you'll sign up every now and then. Them like the spouse is just like, I'm okay to do this. But even if they're saying that, and there's a few rules. One of the rules is if the spouse is in the home, never try to sign up the one spouse without talking to the other. Even if they're telling you that they can do it, it's a load of crap. Always talk to them and make sure. And if they're both there and one tries leaving, come up with an excuse like, hey, before you leave, I need to go over or ask you a couple questions. Keep them together. The biggest thing is getting the spouses together or keeping them together. And if they've got to separate, making sure like, hey, if there's something they're going to do, you're not going to kill them, right? But if one isn't home, if it's a younger couple, I'm generally only signing them up if I'm getting one on the phone or the other one gets home. If they're empty nester age or older, I'm signing up a lot of those one legs. That's my rules of thumb. Hopefully that helps. Any follow-up question on that, Nathan? To answer the question thing, keep the questions super
that makes sense.
Yeah, any of your normal soft closing questions that gauge interest, just ask those super simple questions. The more simple the question is, the better it is, in my opinion, right? That they're going to answer. The best questions are the ones that no matter how they answer, it's in your favor. Because if you ask a question if this is something you're interested in, or if your husband is, you think you would be, there's an answer to that question that will hurt you. But
Yeah, super
they're going to
easy,
tell you
questions.
They're going to tell you if you need to get their spouse on the phone, and just avoid price dropping, because what you want to happen, you need to be the one that repitch. You need to be the one pitching the spouse. And we'll do a whole training on spouses, but the most important thing is you pitch them both. And that yeah, you don't leave one of them out of it if you can, unless like it's an old dog or somebody that they just keep on going and they're asking you questions. Sign those people up, because if the one spouse is there and the one's still asking questions without the spouse, you can sign them up. That's my rules.
Thank you, Sean. That was really good.
Okay, thank you guys. We won't have it. We're gonna start. Let me look at the calendar real quick. We'll be adjourned until January 2nd. So I have an assignment from every Thursday from January 2nd on. And so all you guys, let's get everybody on there. Who did Dan, you don't even know this yet, but you're assigned January 2nd. And then I have an assignment for everybody, all the manager guys every week from Thursday on. So good to chat with you guys, and we'll see you guys all after the holiday, after Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.